Hi everyone, welcome to a new community call from Falco. I'm very excited to see so many faces today. Looks like there are many people joining this week, and I'm very excited because we have, so many new things. It's the week of the release, maybe this week or next week, depending on the volunteers. And I'll let everyone add their names while we go through the topics. So it looks like we have an highlight from Spencer. Spencer, do you want to tell us?
Okay, Spencer, yeah, I couldn't find the unmute. I think this is actually technically a carryover from last week, but there's an Argentinian security conference called Echo Party. I recorded a Falco talk for them. They're also having me do a live workshop-y thing, sort of hands-on their Discord channel. I think their actual conference is sort of the 25th or something like that. So, one more group of people that's going to get to learn about Falco, which is pretty exciting.
So, that's very cool.
Can I follow up on that really quick?
Please.
So we had somebody at Sysdig ask if we could share the Falco talk that I did with Shane at this last KubeCon. I think I'm gonna spend some time in the next few days putting together maybe like a small JavaScript program, or at least make it like such that it's at least well commented and kind of extracted out from the rest. But putting together like a featured talk of the week or of the month or of right now on falco.org, and we would love to feature your talk, I think, Spencer, if that works for everyone else, and just have it on falco.org for some time.
Yeah, I'm down. It's in the void right now because I don't think they've published it yet. But when they do, I will drop a link and we can review it for quality and stuff. But yeah, I like the idea of having, sometimes people just want to click a video and get a sense of what's going on, right? So yeah, keeping that up to date is a good idea.
Also, just an FYI for everyone here, I did some research with the CNCF. All of the CNCF videos are Creative Commons, by the way. So if you've done a KubeCon talk in the past, like, you could use that for things, which is kind of cool.
Okay, nice. I think Chris said also what I wanted to say. Just, it would be cool to have a section in the Falco website where you can just add the videos and just link things so that people can find the content that we have. Because there are so many talks, so many articles, everything, and we just don't link them. Okay, agenda. I have so many items. I try to split some of them with Leonardo so that I don't speak too much because I'm also the MC. First thing, I believe that we lost a bit track in the community call process. We are not designing the MC. So we have to remember today to design the MC for next week so that we can prepare the next week with the MC. I just came in last time because we didn't have an MC. I just realized, oh, we don't have an MC. So just the first point for me.
I can MC next week, no problem.
Thank you, Spencer. MC next was Spencer. Cool. Same things for the releases. We didn't have, sorry for the point, but it's very close, so I want to add it here. For the releases, we didn't design a new release team for 026. So 026 is technically this week, but we don't have a release team. So question is, who wants to be in the release team for 026? 2 people. No one. I bet no one wants to be.
I can do it.
Okay.
I can do it also.
But we should say something about this process, because when we created it, we decided to cycle the people in the release process, which means that theoretically there should be some sort of turnover. For example, if we look at the past release teams, Grasso has been in all of them, like for 3 times. So
Grasso is the release team. Okay.
Grasso is the release team. No.
Basically, sorry if I interrupt you. Basically, if I remember correctly, one time I led the release, and all other time I volunteered myself as backup, and so I was involved almost every time.
Yeah, but the release team is 2 people that should cycle. One of the 2 people should stay for the other to join the next release, so that can help for something new, for knowledge.
Let me add some context so that we can go ahead with everything, because we reached the point of this point. The release is a very good way to be involved in the community. You can learn so many things about how Falco is shipped, and if you had any problems with Falco, like the driver loader doesn't work, or I cannot get Falco, the new version of Falco, working on my environment, the release team is the best way, to get into all of those things and to start understanding how it works, so that you can improve it. It's kind of better that you continue having, or Leonardo Di Donato and me, Leonardo Grasso and me, Leonardo Di Donato, Leonardo Grasso for the releases, but that's how it is. If no one else volunteers, so I will go with them. But please, if you want to speak up and be...
if someone wants to join me in the release team this week or next week or start of next week, Jean-Philippe, Spencer, Loris, I don't know, Radu, whoever, I'm very happy to welcome them in the release team of this week.
So one of the things that I've noticed with other open source projects and releases is this is a problem for all projects. The release team and finding people to take care of this is fundamentally hard. Ways that you can make it easier for other people to help out with this is really focusing on making the release as self-sufficient as possible, meaning that any person should be able to cut a release of Falco using the documentation and tools that are readily available to them, such that they don't need somebody on a call with them, so that they have to learn things that aren't written down somewhere, or something might be broken, or they might need access to a tool or an account. I know it's written down. I just every time that I've looked into doing it, there's always been this underlying theme of we need somebody else on the phone who knows what's going on. And if we can capture whatever the delta is between what's written down and what we actually do, I think that would be helpful as well.
I believe that you should just try again, Chris, because since you last tried, it was probably 6 months. So you should just try again and see if it works for you. Because if you continue doing it, the same people, you're not going to capture the diff, because you basically just know how it works. So you cannot spot the differences. So if we have someone new in the process, we can, it happened again already with Leonardo Grasso. Leonardo Grasso was not involved before becoming the main person in the releases. And he did a lot of improvements because he basically didn't write the release process and didn't write the tools. So he knew what was different. But then we didn't have, fresh meat on the release team again. So sure. We didn't find the problem.
Can I volunteer to be on the release team this time? And my criteria for being on the release team is I'll set up the time, and it's going to be during an American time zone. And I will be responsible for the release. And if there's any issues, I'll document it well.
Okay, so who wants to be in the team? Leonardo Grasso, Leonardo Di Donato, and Chris?
Yeah, well, okay. Only one question. The date. When we will release it? Which day? Laura?
I'm looking at my calendar. If I'm in charge of the release, it's going to be a question for me. So
I'm not in the release team, Leo.
No, sorry, I was calling the MC to put the attention of the date, because the past month we missed the date. The date by process is the 16th of the month. So today.
I cannot look at my calendar because I'm screen sharing and people will see how many meetings I am. So
yeah. Nice. So since today is 16th of September, ideally we should find a date really near today. But As Chris said,
I can do it tomorrow from 10 a.m. Pacific until 3 p.m. Pacific.
Okay, which means in Italian time, 8 a.m. Pacific to...
That would be, that's 2 hours from now, tomorrow.
Can we go ahead and in the meanwhile the release team decides what they want to do in the background so that we can give everyone an opportunity to speak?
Okay, sure.
Okay. Next thing, just me again, very fast. We have a problem compiling the BPF probe with newer kernels, meaning like 5.8.5 onwards. Initially, the problem was just about compiling with new Clang versions. Now is also tied to the fact that the kernels is new. So basically, like if you are on a Fedora like 32, you're not going to be able to compile it. Leonardo and I are working on that, but we don't have a final patch yet to it. Leo, if you want to talk about the Falco driver loader improvements, I think JP will be very interested in this.
Yeah, basically, JP brought to my attention some issues with the building of the kernel module driver on Ubuntu Focal, so 20.04, and I started investigating. There was also another user, I don't remember the name of now, having similar issues, and basically we discovered that there was a bug in driver kit for pre-built Ubuntu generic and Ubuntu AWS drivers. We fixed it. We are updating. We released the new version of driver kit. We're updating the drivers build grid right now for using this new version. And also we submit the patch to Falco, specifically to the Falco driver loader script, me and Lorenzo together, to basically let the Falco driver loader script try every GCC version present in the environment to build the kernel module. This because in some environments, like the Ubuntu Focal 1, it needs GCC 8, for example, to build, and the default GCC, which is in the Falco Docker container, GCC 5, does not work on those environments. So basically, we implemented a logic that's able to try every GCC that's present in the environment to build the kernel module.
I have a question. I have a question regarding the last improvement. Some time ago, a user did another PR that is doing a similar thing. I'm linking it in the chat. I would just know if there is something different in this approach respect to the one I'm linking.
Let me see.
Maybe Lorenzo, if you can screen share.
I'm screen sharing, right?
Yeah, I put a link in the chat. If you can open it, please.
Yes, this is very different. I already looked at
it. I'm just curious to understand what are the pros and the cons. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the fact is that here the edits first of all are not in the Falco driver loader script, but in the Docker entry point, which means it only works for Docker images, not for using the Falco driver loader script directly on the host. Furthermore, the Falco driver loader script uses DKMS to install the kernel module, and the DKMS does not respect the environment's variable CC, which means that you need another way to configure DKMS to use another GCC to build the driver, the kernel module with that GCC. So the patch that we just submitted does it in the Falco driver load script, making it work on into the Falco container, in the Falco Docker image, and also on the host directly. While in this way, it will only work if you use that container with that Docker entry point.
Yeah, this is a bit more sophisticated too, because
exactly
it doesn't do a symlink, because you cannot really do. I mean, in our Docker image, Docker container, we can do a symlink, but not in people machines.
Yes.
So
exactly, but what about the way to guess the version? Because in the other PR, the user just used the proc/version to guess the right version of the GCC. I mean, is this a good strategy, or there are cases where it's better to cycle each version and find the right one?
It's probably a good strategy, but the kernel makefile and the kernel source code are very more, complicated than that. And also having the right version of GCC doesn't mean that the version of GCC will work.
Yeah.
So we just, go and see which one works.
Perfect.
For example, Leo, in driver, for example, that does something in the end similar to the Falco driver loader script. We adopted another approach, which was while we were building driver kit, guessing the correct ZCC version for the environment we were building the driver, because you cannot really know in advance which ZCC version will work. For example, in Ubuntu Focal, 8 works. In other environments, GCC 7 works, or 6 or 5. So it's not just about one version.
Perfect.
You have to.
Perfect. Thank you. I asked this
Jean-Philippe has a question.
Yeah, I have a quick question. So if I decided to create a symlink to force GCC 8, would it work for Ubuntu 16.04 or?
Exactly, you are right.
Would it work or would it break?
For 16, you probably need to use GCC 5 or 6.
Okay, good. Thank you.
But I mean, if you, let's say that you tried, like before we did this, you just tried to symlink the right GCC and you found the right one by just trying, you will get exactly the same results.
Yeah. Okay, cool. No, it's just that I deploy a single daemon set, but that daemon set is running on different versions of Ubuntu because we have different versions of Ubuntu in our cluster for unknown reasons. So it might break if I force a specific version of GCC.
This is the reason that I found the approach of iterating over all the GCC useful, because maybe you have an host with an Ubuntu, another host with another Ubuntu, and that way it will either work one way or the other just by trying the GCC that's work. Otherwise, you have to draft different Docker images for different Ubuntus, and that's something that I personally don't want. I mean,
it's worth notice that please try the highest version of GCC first, because usually highest GCC versions have more security fixes and stuff. So if you go.
Yeah, indeed. I asked this question just because, in my opinion, we can close the other PR in favor of this new one, because I think it solved the problem definitively.
Yeah, if you go and close it, please be very explanatory with the users, because we don't want to say just.
This is the reason why I asked your explanation.
Thank you.
No worries, Leo. No worries. Thank you for asking.
Okay, next item. Sorry for taking much time. Driver kit improvements about Ubuntu AWS. Still the same topic, just a different shape. Basically,
in this case, the problem was a bit different. I mean, the problem was that the regex we using for parsing the URLs where the kernel leaders are was wrong, honestly. And so we fixed it, and now it's able to find the kernel leaders packages to install inside the driver kit environments to build the drivers, the probes and the drivers. And so now we were having issues with pull requests on test infra, introducing prep builds for Ubuntu AWS 1035, 1024, Ubuntu AWS 5.3, 5.4. They were not building. Now, as soon we complete the release of this new driver kit and we update the build grid, they will work. And we will also have pre-built for them.
So
if
it's
Beam3 does not
all those
limit
files,
us.
5.4, 5.8, etc. These will probably not compile the program, but yes. Okay.
That one for other reasons.
Yeah, for the other reason that was in the other point here. Okay, DriverKit improvements. Okay, it's going to be released, the first release of DriverKit, like with a tag. And so there's another point from a new user that I don't recall I've been seeing them. So welcome.
Yes.
Sorry if we pronounce your name incorrectly, Kiki Wang.
This one, I'm from China.
Welcome.
Yes.
Welcome. Please
Welcome.
tell us what you want to share.
Share.
I'm gonna open the issue that you linked so that you have context.
Yes, I run dd command in a machine. If I run ddif equals 0 and the CPU percent is up to 24% and the disk write is high. If I run in with Falco, the time is 260 seconds, but without Falco, the time is 100 seconds. It's right slower. It's not right slow. I think it has a huge overhead when the host has a large syscalls. This is my problem.
Okay. Anyone experiences this?
How many system calls per second are you generating? Does the issue say it? Do you have the figure?
I think the dd command will call 5.
Yeah, it's as fast as possible. So this is probably millions of system calls per second, I assume.
Yes, it's just an example for a huge large discourse for application. But in the production environment, there has a large application like this. I thought the test on the blog is not enough. I have seen. Wait a second.
I never experienced this, so I will need more details.
So with the DD running at full steam, again at millions of system calls per second, this is 24% CPU for Falco is probably actually not too terrible. CPU utilization, I assume, of one CPU.
Yes.
I'm not understanding if the overhead means that the system is slowing down or Falco is becoming just using more CPU. I don't understand this.
I think what I read is Falco is using 24% of CPU, so Falco is using a substantial amount of CPU, and the write performance of DD is going down 100%. First one is caused by Falco just using CPU, and since we are already dropping, I mean, DD will do a gazillion reads and writes on disk per second. So we can go and profile a little bit Falco in the situation, but I assume that 24%, and again, it would be nice to know, because essentially the overhead here is directly proportional to the number of system calls. So it would be nice to understand in this test how many system calls per second you're doing. I don't know if there's a flag in Falco to return that. In sysdig, I think you can use -v to see some of that information. And we
have so many flags.
We could try to understand and profile what Falco uses in terms of CPU at that event rate, but I bet since we're already filtering out reads and writes in Falco, it's mostly the engine, and there is not a huge amount of space for optimization at that level, even with like optimization of the rule engine and the kind of stuff, because I don't think a lot of rules are hit in a situation like that. The 100% decrease in disk bandwidth with DD, that's caused by the fact that the kernel module or the kernel driver or the eBPF module will generate a little overhead per system call to capture the data. And when you have a gazillion system call per second, that overhead becomes substantial. Here, currently, there's not a lot we can do, but, and I see that Mark has turned on the light, is probably the most knowledgeable in addition to me here. One thing that we could look into doing is filtering the read and write system calls in the driver or module, and that in a test like this could potentially improve the situation. And I don't know if that's an option in the driver already, Mark. I don't think so, right?
No, I forget if we have that in the open source products or not.
So even in the commercial product, we do filter a bunch of stuff, but not the reads and writes. So I would imagine even in the commercial, the framework is there, but I don't think we do anything for reads and writes, right?
Not by default, though there may be a mechanism where you can push event types all the way down to the kernel and then say skip it.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's the only thing that I can imagine. In a general way, this is an extreme stress situation. And when system call, again, I would be interested in understanding what's the system calls per second
so that's why I turned on that's why I turned on my video. I ran it myself.
That's exactly the place in the driver. Yeah.
I ran it myself on my 13-inch MacBook Pro and got about 2.5 million system calls per second. So that is probably twice as many system calls per second as I see on our busiest environments, where those environments have, 16 cores, 16 gigs of RAM, not, I don't know, 4 cores or whatever I run on my laptop. So although it's a very stressful, a great way to stress Falco, what I see on the typically pretty busy machines in terms of the number of system calls per second is more in the line of hundreds of thousands, maybe 1 million if you're super busy. It's a good stress test, but I think you might find that your real world usage on even pretty busy workloads has quite a few fewer system calls per second. But
so
anyways,
the summary is that the 24%, there's probably not a lot we can do, and it's probably something, 24% of one CPU is probably something that if you want to run Falco on a machine that with that amount of system calls needs to be taken into account. The slowdown in this performance, again, maybe somebody in the issue can go recommend a place in the driver where it's possible to try disable the open and close. And Chiki, I don't know if you're able to go and try to recompile the driver, but that's an experiment that you could do. And in the case we could consider adding a parameter to the driver for this functionality to improve the performance.
Probably the easiest thing to do is just put always drop here to always drop it and see how it behaves.
Exactly. And you compile the module, you try to run it, and my bet is that 100% in decreasing this write becomes almost 0.
Do we think it would be possible to add that suggestion to the issue so that other folks can try it?
Yeah, that's something to be.
That's what I was recommending.
Copy everything that I put here in the issue after. No worries.
Okay.
Just taking notes.
If Chichi tries and it actually works, then we could have a driver load parameter to enable or disable this.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Lorenzo to copy this context. Okay, again, Chichi, we have another item from you. Be prepared. Thanks for bringing so many items. Does Falco support CN proc? No. I looked into this issue.
Yeah.
Yes, that's my comment here. Just forgot it. CN proc is a mechanism that allows you to be notified by the happening of some events in the kernel. So, Chichi, if you want to share the use case you have for this, we'd be happy to hear about that. Okay, Chichi is probably...
Yes, may I share the screen?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Could you see the screen?
Yes.
We can.
Yeah. Now not.
Oh, not anymore.
Second. Could you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, we can see.
Yes, I'm Chichi.
Yeah, now we
I'm
can.
from China, and I'm a security engineer and work on HE. China's Netflix, which has 130 millions, and I responsible for the host introduction detect system, and I run the HIDS on 120 machines, includes virtual machines, and I run the HIDS via CMPOC and Netflix, and the CMPOC to get the process for PID and the real time, and we can get the PID via the PROC CMD9, and which can detect a reverse cell and remote executor. As well as the CMPOC PID and system EPF. The good thing, the CMPOC is very low overhead without install kernel module. And the bad thing is it could not get more syscall. The system good thing, it can get more syscalls, but the bad thing, it has more overhead, just like the previous the issue. It will cause the DD writer is lower, and the issue I install kernel module on the machines. Now is our company's two cases. We find a hacker executor remote command via Spring Boot CVE vulnerable, and HIDS can detect the introduction in second, and the MTT is 1 second. Am I clear? And I think the CMPOC with Netflix is can as a Falcon future.
It makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah.
Anyone?
Yeah. So everybody feel free to comment. In a general way, the use case is clear, and yes, for the specific use case, detecting process execution without collecting every single system call is advantageous. So it's always a matter of trade-offs. In a general way, yeah, with a netlink, like you wouldn't even see the impact of DD that you showed us in the previous because yeah, you just don't go on a system call by system call basis. This is not what Falco does currently. So at this point, I would say the two things that you're showing us, so Falco collecting everything, and DD and Netlink only being able to collect essentially the forks and detecting process executions, are a little bit of orthogonal use cases. Falco more and more has been designed as a general input engine, and actually there's been a substantial amount of discussion in the past about switching maybe the current kernel module with something else that could be more efficient or different in some situations. We haven't really done it for the moment, and it's not something that the community probably would focus its efforts in the short term. Of course, we would be very welcome if somebody is interested in exploring adding functionality like this to Falco in working together and supporting that effort, because based on the slide that you showed us, at least in my opinion, this is a very legitimate use case that yeah, capturing every single system call might be too much for. At the same time, I would recommend still that you do the test that we told you before. So go in the kernel module and try to disable those specific system calls from the kernel module, because I bet even in the stress case that you're talking about, in that case, Falco will be much more efficient and might be efficient enough for your use case. And of course, we would love to see Falco deployed in such a huge infrastructure. We would learn a lot, and we would definitely be very happy to support and help you with specific parameters with Falco if this works and is satisfactory for you. That's my point of view. Maybe other people in the call have a different point of view.
I share your point of view. That's what I commented here. I said exactly the same things. I have some echo, maybe. Okay, now not. So I basically said the same thing. Just trying to implement a user space input, or even try to integrate it in the Falco process, and you can discuss on the code how we can structure that. It's an interesting use case, and honestly, it's one of those where Falco could be more interesting, because you don't need a kernel module or an eBPF probe, but you can still get some results, which is very useful in some environments. So I will say that I will like it if it came with a plan, with a proposal, and with experiments from teaching. We can support you. We can have a working group. We can have whatever. If you need help, you're always here. But we probably, the main maintainers probably don't have time to just take care of this right now. So just take ownership of that and involve us if you want to make it. If everyone agrees, I can go to the next one.
May I write a simple code as a new report in the Falco? I have a PR in the issue.
You said that you have a POC in the issue?
Yes, PR is in these files. I write a Golang demo, and I want to write a more writable Falcon agent. Is okay.
I think she is talking about PR 1398.
Sorry, I lost track of this a bit.
Yes, the PR is down.
Yes. Last comment here issue.
Okay, I didn't see this one.
Well, I didn't see this one.
Okay, yeah, this is a POC, but not integrating with our code. I see. I have the echo again. It's very hard for me to talk. Okay, great. Thank you to whoever muted themselves. Okay.
This
yeah,
example,
this is very nice.
Yes, it's an example. You can monitor the curl command and get the something, get an alert. Can.
Yeah, I saw this now. I remember. I think that this is very nice. However, to discuss, I mean, the fact that this works is, I don't have doubt on that. I would love to see a POC about integrating these in the actual Falco source code, so that we can see how to make it official and at least how to make it a feature, because that will be, you know, the end goal of this discussion, in my opinion. What does everyone else think? Thanks for sharing, Chichi. This is very good.
In the future, you can support SimpleCode as a feature and the EPF as another production. Is okay.
I didn't understand.
Just SimpleCode with PID is network, but only monitor the process creator. But and has another production is use EPF or sysdig. It's okay.
Yeah, I agree. We just need to I think that probably the best thing will be to just I see that in your patch there's some C code, and yeah, there's some C code that has been used in Go. You probably will need to get that C code in a function where you can, you know, just produce events from this feature of the kernel, and try to get the event into our loop, so that you can actually test this against Falco and Falco rules. And once you have something like that, I think we can discuss on how to make this an official Falco feature.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this could be written like a new input in user space for Falco. I think that Lorenzo probably had an example about user space inputs and things like that. So ideally, a new POC could integrate what you've done in this pull request with an example that Lorenzo did about creating user space inputs for Falco, so that we could make Falco in this new input match by using the -u flag of Falco that we introduced in 1 or 2 versions ago.
So basically, Chichi, you will need to extract the information the exact same way you did, and then input the data of the, you know, like the 5 kind of syscalls that you can catch into this context array. You will not be catching the syscalls, but we can consider the things that you are, you know, getting from cnproc as they were syscalls, because you essentially have the same parameters, even if you just have 5 of them. And then just look at this fire event function that I have in this repo, so that you can send an event. You should be good to go. We can, you know, circle back on this at the next community call, so that we can go through the end of the list before the time.
For the moment, thank you. Thanks for sharing this with us. And please, if you do the performance test that we suggested for the previous bullet, let us know, because performance might become good enough that maybe, you know, system calls are good enough for your use case. So I would say before even looking into extending Falco with something else, maybe we can bring the performance to satisfactory for you, which would be great to see.
Okay, thank you.
That's a very good point, Loris. Thanks, Chichi. This was very productive, and it's always very cool to, you know, when you think the syscalls are in Arc, someone comes and say, "Oh, I don't want that, but I really like the engine." Okay, Loris, updates. Oh no, this is Mark's 10 first.
Yeah, there's Mark first.
Falco exceptions proposal. Mark, do you want to speak up on this?
Yeah, so I mean, I did that PR where I kind of proposed the idea. The two things I'm looking for in this call are, one, I wanted to get feedback on one thing that Kaise proposed. I think he's out on paternity leave, so he can't talk about it himself. But I wanted to, see what people thought about the specific way that we would express the exception. So I wanted to get feedback on that. But also, I just wanted to get the green light to go ahead and start making these changes. So we'll do the first thing first. And before that, for people who aren't familiar with the PR, I just wanted to add the notion of having exceptions as more of a first class object to the rules file. So you could easily express big sets of exceptions to rules. The most easy to understand example is the right below etc rule, where we just have lots and lots and lots of repeated things that all basically boil down to this process can write to this file. So there's a more compact way to represent these repeated elements. So I kind of split it into, you first define a bunch of fields. So you kind of say what comprises a good exception, and that's on a per rule basis. And then somewhere else, you would just fill in the values for those things. You would say, this process in this directory, it defines an exception called proc writer for the rule right below binary dir. And then somewhere else, you would add an exception that says, if the process is APK and the directory is user bin, then it's okay. So I know certainly for our uses of Falco at Sysdig, we definitely have a need to manage big sets of exceptions coming from various sources. And I think this proposal would allow make the management of those exceptions a lot easier than what we have now, which is trying to append to conditions and stuff in conditions all over the place. That always works, but it can be a little awkward when you try to tie together lots of additions from multiple locations. So that's the generic proposal. A lot of people already gave good feedback, so I don't think there was any objections to that. But one thing from Kaise was, he kind of wanted the exception to be completely outside the rule. So if you look in the discussion, he's like, hey, can we have the exception be its own object where you define both the fields and the values? I wasn't really a fan of it, but I'm not gonna poo-poo it all by myself. It's kind of a trade-off.
What would be the advantage? I didn't read that part of the issue, so it's probably.
I think it's hard to defend somebody else's thing, but I think he was inspired by the Kubernetes security context, where it's more of an overlay. So you kind of take it and then you add on exceptions to it on the top. I think that's why he was gravitating towards that.
The advantage is that you can reuse the exception, right? In this way or not? Like you can use the same exception for
multiple rules.
I don't think that's what he wanted to do.
Oh no, because this is tied to the name of the rules.
Yeah. I think maybe he was thinking like the exceptions could all be in a separate file or something. And
I mean, this idea will be useful for me if you only define the exception and then you refer the exception in another way, like we do for the macros. Right? Because then you will be allowed to use this in many rules like we do for macros and the other things. So that you can just basically write the exception once. I mean, one of the things I didn't understand is once you write the exceptions, let's say that you have, it can happen that you have the same exception in multiple rules and that the exception becomes so big that the rules files become very long. Or not? What do you think, Mark?
Are you talking about in the proposal or how it would work?
No, I mean, let me make an example, right? This is just like, let's say this is a rule file, right? Mm-hmm. And let's say that you want to add like 10 more rules and you want to have an exception in all of them, like in the same way you have this one, like exactly the same exception, right? Are you going to copy and paste these over and over, or there's a way to reuse the exception that you put here?
Oh, I see. As I originally proposed it, you wouldn't be able to reuse exception fields as you described.
Okay.
Though maybe we could change it to make it work that way. You know, the idea is that I do want to make them pretty rule specific. So I don't want to have a thing where you can add an exception for any rule based on image name, because I think that's like ultimately too broad of a way to do it. Like you should try to put the onus on the rule writer to be like, you should really think about like what makes a good exception for this rule and try to make it specific rather than generic.
Okay, so it's that is the.
It's also more readable.
Can I ask another question? Do you, as an implementation detail, but maybe you can reply, do you believe that this is going to be implemented in the same parser with the same code that we have, or this is going to leave some, I mean, is going to be a whole new thing, or you're going to?
Yeah, so Laura's kind of brought that up too. I was originally thinking it would be more put in the guts of the engine, but Laura suggested just make it syntactic sugar, where the exceptions just, they, under the scenes, they do get tacked on to the condition. And I think that's a good proposal because, you know, if you ever want to optimize the condition parsing and evaluation, it'd be nice if you just have one condition. So that's the way I'm going to go. So it'll be in the Lua rule parser.
Sorry for interrupting. Can I make that for me, that I'm not a native English speaker, so that I see that if I understand? This, what you said means that instead of, you know, doing some more parser and, you know, code over the engine, you're just gonna create the same condition that you will put in the condition, and you're gonna append them at runtime, so that if you have any optimization at runtime, you can make them like if the rules was written in the old way, right?
You append them at rule compilation time, I assume.
Yeah, rule compilation
time. When you create the rule, this just becomes like if it was a longer filter. Yeah, Mark, the reason why I recommended that is because I think there's many opportunities for optimization if you leave the stuff together in a single evaluation tree instead of splitting stuff, especially when you have these long checks against you know, name field, then you can aggregate them much better if you keep them together.
So if I look at the AST that generates, I will see the same thing as before, right?
We only have a few minutes left, and I would really like to get to Fahad's point at the end about operational stability and the bin tray storage limit. Would it be possible for us to finish the code review in going into the next call or during another call?
Well, the first thing is, if you feel strongly between one of either Kaise's way or what originally proposed, please put so in the PR so we can kind of make a decision on that. You know, I'm the one writing the code, so if everybody's indifferent, I'm going to do it the way I wrote it down. But if everybody likes it the other way, I can
go for it. And personally, I agree with the proposal, and personally, I vote for you to going away. This is a nice addition to the Falco. This is a nice addition to the.
Same. I really like it if you have the same.
I really like it if you have the same. My two cents are, Mark, that I like the idea of having the exception located with the rule. Also because it seems to me there's a distinction between the exception fields and the actual values. While the Kaiser proposal is reasonable too, and probably will make exception more usable and more, I don't know how to say, but elegant, that in some sort. But I think that the way you're proposing originally, it is for the way that our engine, our fields are done. It's the best way at the moment. Not in general, but at the moment. So I will recommend.
I think that you're running out of time. Sorry, Leo. We have
okay. So just chime in the PR, and then we'll kind of finish it up.
And Loris, do you want to give an update about?
I forfeit my time. I can talk about this next week.
Okay, thank you.
Let's give some time to Fahad and Matt.
Let's talk about operational stability.
Hi guys. We both, me and Matt, we work at a company in US and East Coast. So and we are using Falco to in our infrastructure. And the recent removal of pre-built drivers from 0.23 resulted in problems from the deployment perspective. Yeah, we were wondering, and I believe that was due to the bin tray storage limits. So we were wondering, like, if we can have some policies more around how existing drivers will be deprecated. Like right now, it's 0.25 is the latest version. So supporting pass-through drivers and putting stuff in changelog, and then I think it's useful to have these drivers for at least two versions, two or more versions in bin tray. And if we can get any help from CNCF on the storage, that'll be nice.
Yeah, so Fahad, I've been giving this a lot of thought, and I wanted just to ask kind of a scenario on your end. If there was a storage mechanism in place that, let's say, it went back 6 months to 12 months, and we can decide on the exact amount of time later, or even for every release for that matter. And Falco had a way such that you could configure it to pull from what we would call an archived driver. And that may just be a slower or less response, less reliable storage mechanism. Do you think that would solve your use case here? Basically what I'm thinking is we keep the most recent versions kind of as is, and then we just have like the graveyard of Falco storage artifacts that we would be able to pull from for older versions as needed.
Yeah, that'll help from the perspective of like fixing it. Like if you know how to fix it, and if there's an archive where we can go and configure it to fix that, that'll definitely ease the pain. And then more documentation on for end users to be notified in some way that this is going to be deprecated at this point. That both of these steps would definitely help. But yeah, definitely. If we have an archived pre-built driver somewhere which we can pull from, that'll ease the pain.
Okay. So my thought here would be, I volunteered to give to help with the release this week, starting tomorrow. So I have a feeling that getting intimate with how the drivers are built and how we cut releases is going to be a big part of that. After I understand that system a little bit more, I would be able to maybe partner with you and others on putting together some sort of proposal on how we would want to manage archiving artifacts moving forward. As far as getting support from the CNCF goes, I think that's the least of our concerns. I think right now the biggest concern is just even understanding how a lot of this works and getting the software written in such a way that it will continue to work with whatever archive solution we come up with moving forward. In other words, yes, we shouldn't be deleting artifacts because of a storage limitation. That is something that we can easily fix.
May I ask a very practical question for the release that's coming up, if we have a little bit of time? Is the driver version going to change? And if so, again, I haven't seen any of the release notes. Is the one going to be deleted for 0.24 as part of this? Practically tomorrow, just as a little heads up to us.
As someone who's in charge of the release, I can assure you that to the best of my knowledge, and granted there might be some black magic in this, but to the best of my knowledge, I will not delete anything without giving a very loud warning to everybody.
Thank you. Sorry about the echo. We appreciate it.
No, it's fine. But yeah, like as soon as we understand more of the release and how it works, I'll do my best to relay that information to you and hopefully come up with a quick and easy solution so that this doesn't become a problem moving forward.
Thank you, Chris.
Sure.
Okay, MC next call is Spencer. We don't have much time left, so in reality we are 5 minutes late. So we are already in the other call about the user space. I'll end the word to Chris, which organizes the call.
Okay. I'm going to drop for 1 minute and then I'm going to rejoin as the CNCF account.
Yeah, so I have
Thanks
to look out from the CNCF account.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.